Hello, and welcome to the Voices in Action podcast. I am your host, Lily Mott. This podcast is co-produced by the National Lottery Community Fund and Be the Change Media Network. It is all about youth social action, what it means, why it matters, and the incredible young people driving change in their communities. Youth social action is about young people finding their voice, standing up for what matters to them, and creating positive change. It is at the heart of the I Will movement, which is a UK-wide campaign that empowers young people to take social action and make a difference. This week marks I Will Week 2025, which is an annual celebration of the power of young people to shape their communities and stand up for the issues that matter most to them. This year's theme, What Do You Stand For?, invites all of us to reflect on the values that unite us: truth, dignity, justice, community, and joy. In this episode, I'm joined by two incredible guests, Claire and Reuben, both I Will ambassadors and passionate advocates for youth voice and leadership. Reuben is, among many other roles, an I Will ambassador and a trustee at Bite Back 2030, which is a youth-led movement working to challenge inequalities in the food system and ensure every young person has access to healthy, affordable food. Claire also wears many, many hats. Claire is an I Will ambassador, as well as a changemaker, storyteller, and creative, who has worked with many different organizations, including Young Manchester. Reuben, Claire, welcome to Voices in Action. It is such a pleasure to have you both here, and I'm so excited to be catching up with both of you. I think that you have such incredible stories, so we're going to dive right in. You've both been involved in youth social action for several years now. Can you tell me about where your journey began, what this journey has been like for both of you? Let's get started with Claire, and then we'll come to you, Reuben.
So for me, my social action started off in school. So I grew up in a really small community just outside of Manchester. And there, everybody knew each other. I mean, half the town was related. Like everyone had the same last name. And actually, whilst it came with some challenges, one thing that I was very sure about was I was proud of where I was from, and I felt like I had ownership of my town, and there was a long and strong history of the community banding together to make sure that change happened when it was needed. And in school specifically, I was always really excited in doing outreach projects, whether that was like growing gardens or fundraising. I really enjoyed the act of banding together with my classmates, with my peers, raising awareness for a good cause and getting everyone involved. And I think the getting everybody involved bit really stood out to me. I thought it was really remarkable how people from very different experiences, intergenerationally, you could bring people together for a shared goal. And that's where I started. And do you know what? Even though I no longer live in that small town, I think I still take those experiences with me wherever I go. And it really did shape the kind of leader that I want to be.
I think similar to Claire, I'm from a small town in West Yorkshire, and for me, I hadn't really thought much about like social action or volunteering until I was about 15, 16. And unfortunately, there was a knife crime incident in the community where sadly a young boy lost his life. And I feel like at that moment, the community really felt it, and there was a shock throughout everyone. And so that was the one time where the community centres thought, right, what can we do to actually change things and make an impact? And I was lucky enough to help work on a knife crime campaign at that time to advocate for, for the victims and to kind of bring those conversations to light and to like bring more discussions around knife crime and the deeper systemic roots that are there. And that was really shocking for me and like really stuck with me. So I kind of talked to a lot of people, my friends at the time, for what can I do to get involved. And one of my friends at the time worked for Bite Back, and he was like, this is a movement of young people taking charge um, and making change for the food system. And that was also something that I was really deeply invested in. Like whenever I went down the high street, everyone was in a McDonald's because there was no other place to socialize. There was no youth centers, so it was just McDonald's. And I feel like those two issues, food and knife crime, they're so intertwined because when you don't have any spaces and you have so many systemic issues at hand, then no wonder then that these two issues can combine. And so ever since then, I've been with Backpack, and then through that, joined onto I Will, and I've tried to advocate for the community and try and work through some of those issues and bring a light to the problems that I feel like need to be recognized in society. So yeah.
That is wonderful. Thank you both so much for sharing those stories. And I think, of course, then that leads you to the I Will movement, both of you at different times and probably for different reasons, what you were looking for being a part of the movement. But what does being an I Will ambassador mean to you? What has your journey been like in the I Will movement? Tell me a little bit about that part of your story.
So I became an I Will ambassador in 2019. I applied myself, actually, and I think it was the first time that I'd put my hand up and been like, I want to be a part of something, you know? I think sometimes we wait to be nominated for things, but I saw something that I thought would be cool and interesting. I was 15 when I became an ambassador. And for me, I was looking for a community of change makers, and also somewhere where I could just learn what works well, learn what doesn't work so well when you're engaging with young people, but also improve my confidence with experimenting in these spaces. For me, I think, especially in those first few years, the amount of mentorship that I got, it was so remarkable. And everyone, and still is really excited to help. But I really got that community of change makers and leaders. And I think it's been really nice to be connected to people that I'm just in awe of all the time. Lily, for example, you're one, and just people who aren't afraid to do things and just take up space. And I think that's something that we could all learn from.
That is so wonderful, Claire. I think the taking up space, that's a big thing that I haven't really thought about in the I Will movement, kind of the context, but that is so true. I feel like you think of so many I Will ambassadors, and I have two here on this call who are doing just that and kind of carving their own paths. And so, yeah, I think that's wonderful. But Reuben, you go for it. What brought you to I Will?
Yeah, I would say I saw how beautifully I Will ambassadors were platformed and supported. Like I knew a couple of people, and I think once I actually joined, I think the most amazing thing was like the passion and the energy with which the movement has. Every single conversation had purpose, and it made me feel more confident, more empowered, and more wanting to create change and actually create the ideas that need to make that change. And so having those conversations and those connections and community. So I feel like a lot of us stick together, work on projects together, and are always trying to support each other. This being one example, right? And I think that's a beautiful thing. We're all doing our own thing, but we can also unite to create the joint changes that we want and what we need.
That is so true. I think that is really the beauty of I Will. And it's so wonderful to be able to have both of you here with different perspectives on what I Will has given you and what you've given I Will. So I'm super excited to chat a little bit about I Will Week as well. But what has your involvement been like in I Will? How has it shaped your understanding of leadership and community? I think you both touched on this a little bit, but if we could go a little bit deeper into the community that I Will has given you and maybe some examples of that community and what it's done, how it's benefited you, I think that is definitely a recurring theme with I Will. So if you guys could share a little bit about that, that would be awesome.
So when I first started, I think being able to be in contact with change makers who were further along in their journey was really, really impactful. There are a few mentors who helped me develop some of the creative campaigns that I worked on, especially because when I started, my social action was really focused on youth voice and particularly youth loneliness and experiences of loneliness within our community. And it was really interesting to speak to young people who'd use different creative routes to communicate those ideas. And the collaborations have been really, really important. You know, whether that was sitting and doing a panel with young people from different lived experience about how their identity has interwoven with their loneliness and what loneliness has looked like for them and the kind of interventions that have helped. And then now my work is it's a bit all over the place, to be honest. I think definitely the creative side is a lot more there, and particularly building spaces for young people to take up space is really, really the goal. I think I've cemented my place within the space, but now it's like, how can we make sure that that door is left wide open? For example, right now, in the last year, actually, we've been doing a lot of work with the European Parliament and strengthening the ties between the UK and the EU to make sure that young people have their say in Europe, because we're still a big stakeholder in Europe. And I think that's been really interesting, looking on such a large scale, but actually taking inspiration from those hyper-local stories. And it's been really lovely being able to bring my own stories of how social action is done in Manchester and seeing how we can apply that to different countries within Europe. And I think right now, I'm excited at the prospect of doing more within Europe and strengthening the UK's identity with Europe. I think there's a lot of opportunities and there's a lot of potential for young people. And I think that it's really important that we all feel European, because we are European, but also that we're able to access really high quality opportunities. And so been working hard to make sure that those avenues are open, and there's so much more to think about. But actually, I've been able to learn from a lot of the other European young people about what's worked really well in their nations and also the unique challenges. Yeah, so I hope that makes sense. But I think right now it's about creating really impactful spaces and making sure that I'm not just the only young person in the room, and actually who else can I invite into these spaces, who else needs to be in the room, and how can I ensure that their voices are heard and not just me being the spokesperson. And I think for me right now, my priority is, how could Claire of 5 years ago be in this room, and other people like Claire of 5 years ago be in this room, and actually how can we physically get these young people into these spaces? And it's a unique challenge, but it's one that I think is really important to take on, because so much is changing. Young people from 16 now have the right to vote, which is really exciting, but we need to make sure that it is done really, really well so that we can have the greatest impact for it.
You tied in like a dozen different issues there, Claire, like different things that people are passionate about, which I think also speaks to the I Will movement as well, with lots of different interests and passions in the movement. What about you, Reuben?
Yeah, I think for me, when I first started, I was maybe a bit more nervous or reserved in terms of like sharing my voice and being comfortable to actually get out there and say what I wanted to say. Because, sometimes it's quite scary thinking that you don't have the right experience or background in a certain area to actually like say and speak your truth. And so I feel like having conversations with people who have been on the I Will movement, talking to staff who are really there to support you and like help you find that confidence. One of the first things I ever went on was the first residential, which is I think met you, Lily, for the first time. And that was one of the first times where I felt like I could openly speak about what I was passionate about and the issues that were affecting me. And it made me really think, wow, I think I can take this further and form myself into and think about the type of leader that I wanted to be. Because having so many examples of leadership in front of me were in different sectors, I think that it just gave me kind of a path in front of me to think, wow, these young people have done these amazing things in similar fields. So I think I can go on and do those things. And I think one of the things that tied all that together was the first voter registration campaign and being given the opportunity to go speak on radio about my experience voting for the first time and just share my thoughts on democracy in general, which kind of made me want to get more involved in that youth voice space and youth democracy, which tied into the later work I will ended up doing around the youth strategy and really allowing young people from all areas of the UK to get involved and have their say over the future of their lives and how they want to live their lives. So I think it's really important, that aspect, as well as like the place-based change approach and being able to have those conversations with young people to actually take ownership over their communities and be involved and interconnected to everyone else. Because I feel like I've had an experience before where young people and my friends have been kind of isolated from the rest of society and everything that's going on when we all face the same issues and we want to have that voice. So I think seeing those examples of communities coming together and really uniting around key issues, whether that be food injustice, whether that be knife crime, whether that be loneliness, like you're talking about, Claire. I think that's really important. And to finish off, I think that's also made me reflect what you said about mentoring and kind of becoming one of those figures as well, because I think it can be quite nerve-wracking, uncertain about how do I actually create the change that I want to see. And taking those first steps was really hard for me. So I think hopefully through this podcast as well, we'll be able to talk about that more. So really exciting times.
Definitely. I'm actually going to throw this back at you, Reuben, because I want to talk a little bit about your work with Bite Back. But can you tell me about your role at Bite Back, being a trustee, what that looks like for you? And can you tell me a little bit more about the impact that you've seen young people make through Bite Back's campaigns? And if you can, this is kind of a triple part question, but can you also maybe connect it to I Will Week, this idea of what do you stand for? But again, that's like a triple part question. So tell me about Bite Back.
Yeah, I got involved in Buyback around 3 years ago, through my friend, and I started off on the youth board trying to create change on a national level. So the food system has always had inequalities, especially around access to healthy, nutritious food. And for a lot of time, that is not framed in the right way. We are not looking at the systemic issues that are causing all of this. And there was never actually young people at the table who were actually experiencing that. And so Bite Back kind of came to fruition where young people came together and kind of took ownership and realized we have a voice and we can create that change. And so through a variety of different campaigns, to touch on the second part of the question, such as free school meals campaign, using their lived experience of free school meals to push that policy forward, through speaking at different events, through working with our local councils and communities. Bite Back kind of helped bring young people together from their schools to be able to create that change. And for me, I stepped into a trustee position where I can now advise on like strategy and focus on making sure that the youth voice is embedded in every part of the organization. So that's looking forward in the next 5 years. How can we take Bite Back all across the UK, all across the globe, and make sure that we are having the impact and so that no child has to suffer and not have the access to the nutritious food that they deserve. Because I feel like that's something that I've experienced when I was in school. I went to the canteen, the food was ridiculously expensive, whereas if you wanted like the sweets, the chocolates, the waffles, the crumpets, whatever, that were really unhealthy, they were the cheapest. And they'd walk outside of school and you had the sushi places that were charging £10, but then you also had McDonald's, which was plastered all over the streets and was offering the cheapest student deals. So when you have this food system that's rigged against you, you don't have any options other than the sad reality, which is why it's affecting young people's health. So for me, I just think it's really important now to kind of help promote those other young people's voices from all over the UK who have maybe never had the opportunity to have their voice shared. So with our Buy Back in Schools program, we're reaching loads of young people in school who are ready to engage with the issue, have never had the opportunity to speak on it before, to kind of help mold their school food and their food environments in their community. So like, that's something that's really exciting that we're ready to push forward and create the next generation of activists, of leaders. And I feel like Bite Back has done a really good job of having those leaders already and to have those really punchy moments and to speak their truths. And I think that ties back to I Will Week, to the truth element and being able to express everything that goes on in their day-to-day lives to the people who need to hear it. Because I've realized in certain political environments, it's very difficult to get a real viewpoint from a young person and from people's different backgrounds. So having the opportunity to get not just one, but a whole range of young people from different backgrounds, different parts of the UK, different ages, different cultures to really bring their food history to the table and bring their communities to create that change. So, and I think we're already having a good effect. And there's a junk food marketing ban coming in place, which we've worked really hard to get to. And I feel like all the young people on the board have like really put a lot of effort into really pushing this in their local councils, to their friends, but also on a national level, and being able to be platformed and to get into the rooms that I think I never dreamed of getting into. And I think they are making space for themselves. So I think it's just a really exciting time and there's so much energy. So I think there's so much to talk about with Bite Back. But yeah, we're growing and we're evolving, and I think it's a really exciting time.
That was wonderful, and we will definitely chat a little bit more about Bite Back, but I think that you did manage to answer all three parts, so that was awesome. Claire, over to you. I would love to talk a little bit about Young Manchester. I think that Young Manchester is such an incredible organization. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts, but I think there's so much that Young Manchester has done to create a foundation for a lot of young people who might want to get involved in social action work but don't know how to do that. Tell me about the role that Young Manchester played in your own social action journey and how Young Manchester has shaped your ideas around collaboration and community and what that has looked like for you. Again, kind of a tricky question, but tell me about Young Manchester.
So my time with Young Manchester, it was amazing, and I still, whenever I'm back up north, I love to just be in that environment. So when 4 years ago now, um, I was commissioned by Young Manchester to evaluate their youth and play fund. So as the city of social action, Manchester was in a really unique position that we now, through Young Manchester's partnerships, had created really hyper-local, place-based partnerships. So rather than two organisations, maybe a mile or two away from each other, competing for funding from Young Manchester, from the City Council, we'd created partnerships, and through funding that we were given by Manchester City Council, those partnerships could apply for funding together. So rather than competing for funding, which unfortunately is currently the environment for charities, they're able to work together, pool resources, pool time together for just applying for grants. And actually we're able to reach young people, not just more young people, but have a larger impact, because a lot of these organizations shared young people because they were working in such a similar location. And actually the underlying issues that they were trying to address were very, very similar, because the young people that they worked with had a shared understanding of what it was like to live in that area. And when I was speaking to the youth workers, the people who made all this wonderful work happen, that was something that they really, really valued, and they really loved being able to collaborate with all the organisations. And actually, one thing I found in Manchester was so many youth workers were working part-time between organisations. So actually, often it was the same network that they were working with. And it made me really see the impact of place-based partnerships. Manchester, whilst it feels like a really, really big city, it is actually quite small geographically. And the infrastructure around the city meant that these partnerships were able to overcome some of these challenges. So, for example, if you live in North Manchester, it's very, very difficult to get to the South Manchester. There's just no bus routes that will take you there. So there's a really good opportunity in South Manchester. Most likely a young person's just not able to access it. And so rather than only giving a small pot of funding to an organisation in North Manchester, we're able to fund for example, transport for these young people within a certain location so that they could access different opportunities. Practically that looked like renting vans and minivans so that young people could access arts and culture within the area. It meant doing training for young people on how to take public transport, because it can be a really, really daunting thing. It also looked like just continuing provision. I think one of the real benefits of the Youth and Play Fund, the Youth and Play Fund was £7.6 million of funding from 2018 to 2022. One of the biggest benefits of it was we weren't asking for organisations to write this really, really long list of what they were going to do with the money, when we were going to see the impact of it. It was very, very flexible. And so that meant the organisations were able to really tailor it to the needs of the young people that they were serving. the biggest feedback that we got from the organizations was how much they appreciated flexibility and being able to respond to things. When you think about all of the challenges that happened nationwide between 2018 and 2022, it was really important that they were able to just make sure that the kids were fed. That's a really important thing. And I think I'm so glad, Reuben, that you're here to talk about that, because I think people underestimate how important these what should be really basic principles are. Within the report, which we titled Sharing Power in a Place, some of the feedback was that, young people were always really excited to open the doors and say, come in, come do these activities, come do this thing, let's train you, let's upskill you. But actually, if those basic needs aren't being met, if a young person is worrying about where they're going to sleep tonight, where food was going to come from, actually they're not able to engage with the programs or the afternoons that you bring them in for. And so some of the things that was actually being funded was just food and making sure that they're being taken care of, and that security I thought was really, really important. And being able to just connect with my hometown and understanding, what, these are the things that matter to us, and things that, we aren't just worrying about, but other people see are important things within our towns. I worked with Marcus Rashford and Premier League Kicks, a good couple of years ago, to help address the need for food within Manchester. And I think it was really important to me that the report that I wrote was really representative of the challenges, the unique challenges that are going in Manchester. And I tried to explain, if you're not from Manchester, this is what the city looks like. This is what the bus routes are like. This is the challenges that everyday young people have to face. And here are some of the ways that really incredible youth workers have tried to address them. And here's how place-based partnerships have helped to make that happen even better and even cohesively, and making it as smooth as possible for young people to go from this provision to that provision, and for it to feel seamless, because we know that the more friction there is for young people to engage, the less likely they are to engage with provision. And honestly, that my time working on Shaping Power in a Place was so incredible, and I'll take that with me wherever I go. Gosh, I think everyone that I will for like the following 6 months after writing the report, everybody was forced to read the report. I just, it felt really special to me. And especially when things are so England focused, so London focused, it was really important for me to give a platform to where I'm from and to the young people that I was a part of, and being able to explain what being Mancunian meant to me, and what I think our city needs, and what the young people have directly said they need out of our city. It was just, honestly, it was a really incredible opportunity. And I have to thank Young Manchester for their faith in me. And that's not just, I believe in you, Claire, but putting their money where their mouth was, giving me the right support, giving me the right connections to be able to write the report. And honestly, I think the way that Young Manchester really champions young people, I think all organizations can learn from, and being able to create the city of social action. And then now we have towns of social action across the country. I think it's just a really remarkable thing. And it makes me even more proud to be from Manchester, that we were able to do that so successfully.
That was wonderful. I think two incredible organizations that you both have touched on. I have one more question about Bite Back and Young Manchester, and then we'll move on to I Will Week. But Bite Back and Young Manchester both received support from the I Will Fund, made possible by the National Lottery Community Fund and the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. So both of you, why do you think funding youth-led projects is so important? Big question there. Reuben, we'll start with you, and then we'll come over to Claire. Reuben, what do you think?
I think for me, me and my friends have always had ideas festering in our brains of change we want to create, how we want to create our dream food environment. And I feel like we have a lot of really bold ideas of how we can spotlight good examples and have healthy foods on our streets in our spotlight. And So by funding these projects, you're giving young people's ideas the ability for it to grow. It's like you're watering a plant. Like, unless you don't have the environment to make it grow, it's so sad to see so many young people have that dream and not be unable to fulfill it and to create the change that they want for their communities. And so with Bite Back, it's been really amazing to see the work that's going on in schools where people, as part of our programs, young people and students can help to recreate their food environment, the meals that they're eating, and help to engage in the conversations on, I've realized that a lot of my food is really unhealthy and there's no way that I can eat healthy. And I've had conversations with people where they were nearly falling asleep at their desks because they didn't have the food that they needed to pay attention, let alone thrive. It was survival. So it's really important that young people who've experienced this can actually have a seat at the table and have their ideas be turned into amazing solutions. And I think another really cool example of this is our recent commercial break campaign, where I don't know if you've seen all over London, they were plastered with billboards saying that young activists have taken up this space so that big corporations, big food companies couldn't. And right next to them, you see that McDonald's is still advertising. And even then, we had one of the big funders, JC actually got our advertising boards removed because some of the big food companies lobbied to get them removed, which shows the scale of the issue. And so we still need to keep pushing, and young people, we need to be supported to be able to take the power and actually push back on some of these measures because it's so scary, the things that are happening to our food environment. And the young people, we need the support, we need the help to be able to make it happen. Because we're all in it, we're all in this together. So, and I think it's such a beautiful thing. We work in partnership, and we had the amazing support of the UK Fund, from I Will, and the National Lottery, who've both been really important to Bite Back and its growth and supporting as many young people as they can to create the change and become activists. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I think being youth-led is so important because I think it really sets us apart as well from other people in the sector when there's not representation, and being able to have those really creative ideas, whether it's on communication campaigns, whether it's speaking directly to the politicians in power, we can create the unique dialogue that cuts through the noise that not many other people can. So I think both of those things, the creativity and the communication, are really important to create the change that we need for our food environment.
That was awesome. That was wonderful. What about you, Claire? What do you think? Why is it important to fund youth-led projects?
So, the studies show that disadvantaged children and young people are more likely to become disadvantaged adults. And when you're working within a place like Manchester, where about a third of children and young people live under the poverty line, you can see there is so much potential to create change for good. And so I think it's really important that we get the experiences of the people who know that place the best and are able to talk about their experiences so that we can make such a really impactful change. Um, I've been able to be a part of that change, and that was really incredible, not just for others, but also for myself, and being able to have that sense of belonging when you are impacting your own community. I think it's really, really powerful. My dream is for every young person to feel really connected within their town, their city, within their place, and for them to have access to really high quality opportunities for them to take ownership. And I just think it's something that has really changed my life, and I hope that other people get to have a positive experience with it too.
That was wonderful. I think we need to chop up those bits and they need to be heard everywhere. I feel like both of those cases for youth-led projects were just so incredible. And obviously, you both have benefited so much from youth-led projects and these real movers and shakers in the youth sector, but also in other sectors. I think it's just incredible to see. And I think this also ties back to I Will, all of us being I Will ambassadors and having had lots of different opportunities to meet an incredible network of people from across the UK. So going back to the theme, the I Will Week theme is what do you stand for, which is a huge question. So let's start there. I'm going to ask each of you, what do you stand for? And why is this theme meaningful to you? What does it mean to you personally?
I can start. I think that's such a big question. But one thing I will say is I think standing for something is really important. And I think it is a really good time politically, with everything that's going on, with the new opportunities for young people to vote and to participate within the area and take ownership of their area. Knowing what you stand for and believe in is really, really important. And feeling like you belong to a cause can really help someone who's lonely, for example. For me, I think part of my mission statement is for young people to feel connected to where they're from, for you to not feel like you have to upheave your life and move miles and miles away for good quality opportunities, for you to feel like you thrive. And in particular, I stand for justice for young people and making sure that we have access to the right resources. And I think for me, it's about the difference between, I've said this quite a few times actually over the years, but I think it's about the difference between equality and equity. And for me, I stand for equity and making sure that in the short term that we give the most resources to those who need it the most, but justice, most importantly, and changing the systems that are causing these issues, as Reuben has so wonderfully put. And I think it's really important that I think in Britain, particularly, we have a mentality where we kind of just complain and keep things as they are. But actually, we need to make sure that we take action and that our complaints don't end with a full stop and that we take action. And that's what I stand for. I stand for taking action. And if I'm going to complain, let me complain all the way to the polls. And I think that's really important that we all, thank you, Reuben. I think it's really important that we all make sure that our complaints don't just end with words and that we take action from it.
My friends and I have this running joke that it's the most British thing to say, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. And then there was an actual commercial that came out. I forget what brand it was. I won't give them a free shout out. But there was a commercial that came out and it was just people saying it is what it is about like horrible things that were happening to them. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's proof. But Claire, I love that. Take it all the way to the polls. Take the complaints somewhere. Don't let them leave there. Reuben, what about you? Go for it. What do you stand for? What does the theme mean to you?
I was clicking in the background if because I think Claire, you've hit every single point perfectly. I think what really resonated with me was when you were talking about justice, and I feel like it can be so frustrating for me seeing all of the inequalities and thinking from a younger age, like, why couldn't my life be like that? Seeing people who had the better outcomes and opportunities, thinking like, why am I in a position where I feel like I can't do anything about it? I don't have a voice. So being able to connect it back, not just about young people's voices, to be able to be seen, but also what are our chances? What are the support systems in place to actually mean that we can do what we want without having to complain? Even if we complain, I think there's a sense at times of, like you were saying, it is what it is. No one's going to listen. And I feel like the seeds of apathy can definitely grow, which means that the politicians don't listen to us and creates a cycle that continues on and on and on. So I think for me, I did some inward looking, especially around this I Will Week, about like preserving hope and like really reframing all of the issues, because I feel like it's so easy to say everything that's wrong with society, but how can we say, A, what are we doing really well? And how can we actually use those positive things to tackle the other issues that we're facing? And I think when you lead with hope, it's a lot harder to do than, like, I think it's the easy thing to just like be really negative. And so it takes a lot of effort through everything, through all of the problems that everyone experiences in their day-to-day life, alongside all of their societal issues, to like keep that hope and not let that spark die. But I think that's one thing that I'm really trying to build on, and by having conversations with such amazing people like yourselves, to keep it going and to find other people who have that same spark. And even those who don't, being able to try and find out for themselves, what do they care about? Because I feel like a lot of young people, linking it back to politics, they feel like, oh, I don't really care about politics. But I feel like they do, because they'll talk to me about the issues, about transport, about how they don't have buses that come on time, about how they feel like there's an inequality in their education provision, how they're not getting as much support from their council, how the bins are not being collected on time. And so I feel like there's a lot of negativity there that can be really channeled and listened to if we reframe how we think about things and think there are all these issues taking place. Actually, I can see them and recognize them in my own life. But it's now actually, how do I actually express that? And I think that's something that I'm looking at working on, especially with the youth strategies. How do we actually create an environment where we have all these issues? They can be recognized and they can be actioned, because there's so many people who they never even get to have those conversations about what's wrong in their life, other than their friends. How are the systems actually helping you to be able to express that? So it brings a couple of the points together, but leading with hope is super important.
I love that. You guys just answered 3 of the last questions that I had for you. So I'm going to end with this one last question. But what do you hope that I Will Week 2025 inspires among young people, among adults, funders, policymakers? What do you hope comes of this message that we're sharing with I Will Week? What do you hope this inspires? We'll go with Claire, and then we'll come to you, Reuben.
Do you know what, Reuben? Hearing what you've just said, I really want to take inspiration from that. And I think from this year's I Will Week, I hope that we can bring back hope in young people and trust as well. Trust in, trust in everything. Trust in themselves, trust in systems, trust in places of power. And I think that's a two-way street. That trust needs to be earned. And I hope in collaboration we can earn it. First and foremost, I hope that we can build hope within the young people that we serve. I think that's such a powerful reflection from you, Reuben. And thank you for saying that, actually. I think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of apathy going around. And I think young people just being hopeful is a really powerful tool. And I think that is an incredible starting point for a lot of change to happen. So thank you so much, Reuben, for saying that, because I think that's such a incredible point. And it's something that I absolutely know is going to be addressed this I Will Week. So, shout out to you, Reuben.
We'll come over to you, Reuben. Last words. What do you hope I Will Week inspires?
Yeah, I think more of these conversations, because I already feel more full, like after speaking to you both about like all of the things that we've been working on and looking forward to the future. But I think also for those of adults, funders, policymakers, I think through these conversations, we recognize that we have our concerns and we want to be reached out to, but there is a responsibility there for other agents to actually come to where we are and actually meet us there. Because if you talk to any young person, they'll tell you exactly what's wrong in their life and what needs fixing. And you have to be in those spaces to be able to like meet them where they're at, make the changes, create the institutions, create whatever you need to create, be creative. Use young people firstly to help create what you need to reach them. But there needs to be methods so that they can have their voice. And so I think hopefully as we platform more amazing stories to come, I'm so excited to see what's to come. I think that hopefully other adults will really watch and catch on to what we're trying to get out here and the value that we bring, because we shouldn't have to prove ourselves here. We should automatically be accepted and have our voices, have our experience recognized and our skills. Because as much as we have our lived experience, we have a lot to bring to the table as well. And I feel like that really needs to be recognized and brought into action because, yeah, there's so much to do. And I feel like we have the answers. We're ready to go. So it's just about connecting the dots. And I feel like there is still a bit of hope there. I feel like I won't go too much into the politics in the UK and the US, but I feel like in pockets of whatever's going on, there is still hope there. And I feel like it's been reinvigorated. So I'm really looking forward to how other parts of society can come together and really use some of that hope to build forward for everyone. So I feel like this conversation has brought a lot of new ideas and made me reflect as well. So yeah, thank you so much for this. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me today. And I think this conversation has given me a lot of hope and has definitely made me think about youth voice leadership. I mean, I guess even what I stand for. I think that's the question that we all need to be asking ourselves, and you both answered it beautifully. So I hope that that prompts other people to also go within themselves and think about what they stand for, and hopefully to talk with some others in their community about what they stand for, and hopefully include those young voices in that conversation as well, because we all stand for things and a lot of times we don't necessarily get asked. So thank you both so much for joining me and for talking about all of your incredible experience. For anyone listening, don't forget it is I Will Week, so check out the link in the episode description to learn more, join the events, and find out how you can stand up for what matters most to you. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join us for future episodes as we continue exploring youth social action, what it means, why it matters, and the incredible young people driving change in their communities. We will see you next time.